Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Nitrocross podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Nabila and as always, I am joined by my wonderful co-host, Thiemo Albers-Daly. How are you doing today?
Today, refreshed and looking forward to diving back into the latest couple of rounds of Nitrocross. We've had a little gap again before we review it, which I feel like is nice because we get over all of the drama of the weekend, let the dust settle, which there was a bit of dust in Salt Lake City, not surprisingly, and then we can get into the meat of it properly. How are you?
I've been better. We've had a crazy week down here in Florida. I'm sure you've all heard of Milton, so that was fun. So yeah,
No
that
idea
is
what you're on
my
about.
apologies for the delay on this podcast because Milton decided to take my power and my internet out for almost 5 days. So
Honestly,
yes,
this is
paying
two
lots of
podcasts in a
attention.
row. You've had pretty decent excuses for delaying it. It's kind of you're in Africa, you're doing a lot of busy stuff there, and then a hurricane comes in and ruins it. I'm kind of worried for you for what's going to delay the next podcast at this point.
They're actually talking of a third hurricane, so let's just hope that doesn't happen. I can't do 3 in 6 weeks.
Sharknado.
2 in 3 weeks is enough. Plenty. I don't need any more. But anyway, has hurricanes come in, I feel like, that perfectly segues us onto what happens in Nitrocross and things like Salt Lake City. So
Don't give them
that,
ideas.
yeah, with that in mind, we had a fun return to the grid this last weekend. It's not even the last weekend. See, this is the problem with the massive delays is I'm always going to constantly think it's just happened, but it's not. But
Just say
we
last
had
round. You're fine then.
yeah, last round. So we had Kevin Eriksson back on the grid, did we not?
Yes. Yeah, back after the injury he sustained in Richmond. So back racing, we'd love to see it. And again, I think like we said when we were talking about Richmond, you always hate to see it, but you'd prefer that they go and take the time they need to recover properly so that they can then be fully committed to the cover. Because you know that some of these drivers will definitely have done a lot of racing when they potentially shouldn't have. And it's been probably fine for the most part, but it's still not something that we'd recommend. And I'm glad that Kevin was sensible enough to go away and sort himself out properly and come back and get back in the thick of it. So great to see him back and not terrible weekend for him. It didn't go spectacularly, but it wasn't terrible either. So it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's amazing how quickly you can recover from those things if you just give yourself that time to rest. So good for him for like, taking a step back and coming back and then like it doesn't always have to be a great weekend, you know what I mean? Like with the points in
Mm.
Nitrocross, I feel like you could have a shockingly bad weekend and still end up somewhere in the top three in this championship because we still don't understand the point structure here. So,
No, exactly. It's one of the things where you kind of just almost want to enter one of the categories just for a laugh, just to see how far up you could get in the standings without really trying or not understanding what on earth's going on, which I feel like is how they decide Baja bugs most of the time. But we'll get to that. We also had some track changes, which I wouldn't normally mention just because that is me nerding out a little bit, but it actually did deliver some better racing across the weekend. So I thought that's just worth mentioning quickly because turn three both bank corners higher than last season, and I think Jim York was the one testing that out immediately in classic Jim York style. Turn seven got widened, tabletop between T5 and T6 was bigger than before, and all of these places were places where you saw really good opportunities open up for the drivers, and pretty much every category took advantage of that in some way, shape, or form. It felt like across the weekend in both rounds. So I like that they made few changes, not redesign the whole track or anything, but they looked from last year and went, what could we do better? And this is something we do praise Nitrocross for is they do have an open mind with these sorts of things. And you see that off track, you see that on track, and I like that this is something where it's definitely improved it. Sometimes you make these changes and you try and improve it and it doesn't do it. But this
mhm.
it did exactly what it needed to and added to everything.
I think that's really important too, though. Like you go to the same tracks year in, year out, right? I think what we're on year three of
Hmm.
going to some of these events and those tiny little changes, even though they might not seem dramatic in the beginning, because it's hard to change an entire track layout like that. Like you don't ever see the Grand Prix changing their track layout. It's very rare. So I think it's fun that they have that ability to make those changes and they're changing in favor, if that makes sense, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
I like that idea. And I think it also creates something slightly different for the drivers because it doesn't become driving based on memory at that point. And I know you can never make a gap jump identical because they obviously get changed slightly, even if you're doing exactly the same thing. They're never going to be perfect, but like I think it's really cool and it gives that driver a little bit more of a sense of, I don't know, differentials because you could be better at one style than you could be at the other style in a way. And that's what I always liked about rallying. So it's really nice that they have that adaptability within this
I
series that you
agree.
don't
And
get.
and and the turn that you had coming off the gap jump this time, every time, I think one of the phrases of the weekend was, "Can we get a perfect zipper moment?" And all the cars kind of either the ones going over the gap jump or the ones coming from the Joker lap, all merging into the same place to go around this corner. Then you want to see if you can get them all lined up perfectly as they shimmy around. And you got it once or twice, I think, and it was really nice to see. And you just think that's probably more doable because of that change they've made to the track there. And I like that this is a this is something that is just a happy coincidence that happens as a result. You're not changing it just so you can get something to look pretty. You're doing it for the racing. It just happened to be a result of that, and it was good fun to see because you got to see it perfectly done. But then you saw other times where it really wasn't perfectly done, and there was all the door bashing, which again is very Nitrocross and what we're here for.
Absolutely. I do love a little bit of door bashing. It makes it more fun. I hate to say it. The races that have that little kind of action or knocks, or like, obviously, no one wants to take another person out, but it does make it more fun. Like, you could be having the race of your life and just one small wrong move of someone else's comes and ruins it. Like, it creates so much more stakes.
I
And
think
I'm
you
a
want that in
stakes
all
person.
motorsport, though, don't you? Because you think you
Yeah.
want to take it up to the line and not go over it, but you want to push where that limit is. And I think all of these drivers, they've all gone over the limit at some point, but then they learn from that, and they're not deliberately going in with that in mind. It's
Hmm.
I know who's going to be in this car, who I can push it more with than other drivers, and where the rubbing and racing is just about enough. And you see how the main difference, like, well, the main difference is probably a bit of a leap, but one of the differences between F1 and Nitrocross, for example, is that you get penalised in F1 now for doing a slightly ballsy overtake when that's what should be encouraged. And then in Nitrocross, you go, "Oh, I like that. Do more of that, please." And you go, "I know which one I prefer."
Absolutely. And I think you always need that kind of thing. Like, I feel like so many things just don't have stakes anymore. And without stakes, where's fun? In my
Well,
opinion.
exactly.
I'm the same way in everything, though. Ask me about books too. Like, I need stakes involved. You don't have stakes, it's just boring.
Again,
No
it makes
offense
it
to
more
John, we
interesting,
still
doesn't it?
love you. But come on. It's been a better year for that. Anyway, segueing on to the racing that you truly care about. So for round three, stopping into the SXS category, we still have Travis showing up for that and on pole and P1. Again,
Yeah,
you
he
expect
he
it, but sometimes it doesn't happen.
yeah, it was interesting because this weekend he was back for round three, but not for round four because he's Travis Pastrana and he had to be off somewhere. I can't remember where off the top of my head now. Like you say, there's been a bit of a gap. My memory's lapsed in time there. But in terms of him wanting to still school everyone else in that category, he did exactly want to do that poll and win straight away. Like you said, like I'm not here tomorrow, so I got to do this all now and just remind you that I can do this, and hopefully whoever replaces me can go and do a good job of that. But right now, I'm in charge and I'm going to go and do that. Which, you're not surprised, like you say, that Travis is doing that sort of thing. And it was a classically SXS race from what I recall of it. And I think one of the more, I was about to say more interesting, but also just classically SXS moments. Again, I'm just going to keep repeating myself here. I feel like with this category is that it was Geisendorf on the second lap of the final. He got a little bit airborne over the top of one of the other Can-Am cars. And again, you just don't see that in other motorsport categories. Or if you do, it isn't just a part of a race. There's usually then a yellow flag or a red flag because one of the cars is going to be out. Then you got to clear all those way. And he just drove over part of a car and then was just off into this. And we'll just keep racing and we do this sort of thing. And all the cars and all the drivers are perfectly fine. You think, yeah, why not? I like that we've got this kind of madness here still. And this, Salt Lake City is one of the, I think it was the first place Nitrocross really went when they were trying everything out to begin with. It felt appropriate of pushing the envelope.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's just this category never fails to keep that fun element involved.
For me, I think as much as kind of Pastrana and Lecroy were where we expected them to be in P1 and P2, and Geisendorf sneaking into P3, the standout for me from that race was Hayley Deegan in P4, the kind of the newly announced Indy Next driver for next year. I like that she's coming into her own in this category now a bit as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always fun seeing people go from track racing to stuff like this. I'm always intrigued on how they're gonna fare because it's a completely different vibe. And I know in a lot of the sense, track racing does have a little bit more of like a touch and go aspect, but nothing really has a crashing into you style that Nitrocross has. So,
That's why
and
it's been
also
so
it's a
interesting to
completely
watch Leah
different set.
Block this year, where she's been doing double duty between this and
Hmm.
F1 Academy. And I was actually just doing a podcast on F1 Academy last night for the Undercut podcast, and we were talking about Leah Block and how much she's improved. But sometimes, I think it was possibly in Zandvoort earlier in the year, you noticed how she was trying to apply rallying techniques to a single seater and obviously not working because you can't just get the rear end to do what you wanted to do in a single
So,
seater. And as much as I
hmm,
would have loved the Mario Kart kind of drifting on those bank corners, that's not going to work in the way you want it to.
it does not work. I've tried it. Coming from a rally background, I've definitely tried trying to make the rear end move on a track and it just doesn't work. The car's not set up for it. Because on tarmac, to an extent, you can still even move the back end and have it swing, in rallying. Like it's just doable. Race cars aren't designed for that. And it's slow. So, yeah. And she actually,
It always
speaking
just
of,
makes me think of Clarkson when he tried doing the handbrake turn of the lorry. And it's like, why is it not doing it? And it's like, it's
mhm.
a very different machine.
So next Evo, we had Horman in P1. That doesn't surprise me. He has done it before, and it's nice to see a third different winner in this category with Jeong in P2 and Janssen in P3. I think this category, it's lovely to see that we have more people because usually it's that category that kind of sticks around the maybe 5 to 6 car mark, but nice to see 8 people out there in this
Yeah, and
particular
I think all of
Evo.
them, to a reasonable extent, stand a chance of winning. But in terms of championship, we already know which way that's going to go. If it's those three for the rest of the season, it's going to be Janssen, Hellman, and De Jong there fighting.
Mhm.
And for me, saying that with the championship, but keeping the winnability of each race alive is key as well. There, and I think that all the other drivers are proving that. I mean, Gruska, he really got his elbows out this weekend. I mean, he very nearly got P3 at the end, and he was battling brilliantly with Janssen. They went over the tabletop jump at exactly the same time and really toing and froing. And then De Jong and Janssen were doing that on the final lap, and it was just this nice close wheel to wheel thing that we haven't always seen in. I was going to say this category, but it's predecessor category, the next category, because it seemed very processional for a lot of last season. It felt like, and not necessarily in a terrible way, but it was just nice to see that there is this. Everyone's kind of converging now, and you've got your favorite three, perhaps, but everyone else isn't terribly far behind either.
Yeah, I love that. And that's my favorite thing about racing is that ability to have that close calls and like not really being able to call anything. I love that feeling for sure. And this one, for me, the next one I'm very excited about because in Baja Bugs, we have a winner that we've not had before because it last season it was basically jumping around between Ryan and Blake. And
Mm.
this year
Blake, who
we have a
wasn't
different
racing this
person on.
weekend either, so wasn't even remotely standing a chance there. So
Yeah, I
we were
know.
kind of guaranteed to have something interesting happen, and we did get that happen with Greg Shapiro, which was great because, like we said, we rattle off so many names in Baja Bugs. It feels like every week, um, and there's a bit of a turnaround. But like you say, it was either Wilkie or Ryan. And you're like, it's great,
Hmm.
we've got the battle, but now it's really wide open in the sense that Baja Bugs is this weirdly very slow but very competitive and also very fast category, which I don't quite understand. And we're saying we don't understand the point system for a lot of Nitrocross most of the time. I'm still plunging away hard at it, like I'm trying to decode some kind of secret stuff from World War II. But apparently you get 45 points for pole position. I don't know if that's across
Hmm.
all categories, but at least in pole, I heard this in commentary, and I'm writing that down. I don't know where this factors into my algorithm to figure out the rest of this now, but I love that you get potentially 45 points a pole.
I want this structure in F1.
Can you
Can you
imagine?
imagine how fun that would be?
Oh, you get them trying a lot harder in places now, wouldn't you?
Yeah, 100%. But
But
also,
keep the
like,
rest keep the rest of it the same. Still only 25 points for a win, but you get 45 for pole.
I think
That
we'd
would
see some
spice things up.
interesting qualifying. Qualifying could become more entertaining than the race at that point. F1 take notes. But
In terms of notes not to take note of for what you should do in F1, don't copy Jim York ever, especially not in this one because that lovely banking I was talking about after the gap jump, where they had the nice
mhm.
zipper moments and some door bashing. He saw this wall and when this is a perfect opportunity to just go right over the top of it, I think, and just well, he came over the gap jump and then I assume he went to turn, but there were other cars there, and he just ended up going straight and just kind of straddling the wall a little bit, and then just kind of was there, and it did cause a red flag, which brought out some great comments, including one from Cody going, "It's only a car on the wall, just leave it, you know, it's fine. You don't need to, we don't need to stop the racing for this." Um, and then obviously the other quote being, "There's usually a dollar bet on whether York's going to roll or not," which he, yeah, he delivered. He delivered. He's only there for the crashing. He said as much himself, but again, it's just classic Baja bugs.
Mhm. It is a fun little category. And then after the fun, you get, what you really want your teeth getting into, the Group E. We had a top qualifier of Tanner Faust, which is nice to see because I feel like for him, he's playing a little bit of catch up by the fact that he's not been in
Hmm.
this as consistently as the people that are obviously winning consistently. And then we had a Baccarat P1. That I
Yeah,
feel like has been a very long time, right? Like,
yeah. I think he hasn't won in Nitrocross since season two
that's what I
of.
thought.
So it was 2023. So it was only technically last year, but it was a good while ago at Glen Helen. So it would have been even earlier in the year as well.
Hmm.
Which when you've got a series like we're saying with such big gaps in it, that's a hell of a gap to not win anything, especially when your teammates Robin Larson, he's cleaning up, doing everything, and especially when you think back to Richmond, where he was leaving that second round absolutely fuming because of what was going on there, and he comes in and he does this here. So he was a very happy chappy, I'm sure. But again, I want to just go back to Tanner slightly. What he's saying there, I like that he was top qualifier, and it's there's this upward trend. 'Cause I think we see this sometimes, not just Nitrocross, but across a lot of other categories where someone's been away for a while, they come back in, and they never really capture that magic back. They show glimpses, but it's never quite there. And it's like he's not there yet, but he's in the right direction. I like that.
Yeah, same. I love that kind of like feeling. And also, I don't know if I'm going to call it yet, but Larson being in
Yeah.
P2, is there a possibility Larson's winning this championship again?
I mean, he is in the lead of the championship now overall after this weekend, which does favour your theory there, which is not an outrageous theory, but I also hope not. I think the fact that
Hmm.
Backward came in and managed to do what he did across both rounds this weekend means that we should at least have a bit more of a fight for it. And I think we still can't like rule out people like the Erikssons or McConnell or even Travis, not Travis, sorry, Tanner, not
Yeah.
necessarily to win the championship, but to be a thorn in everyone's side because, like you say, he's playing catch up and he's not going to want to win a championship. But I think
Yeah.
he knows it's with the points being what they are. He can just come in and have some fun and just be improving. Like I don't really give a shit. I'm just going to go and do what I want to do here, and his performance, I think, in the LCQ after round three, where he was doing really well up to that point, but then obviously ended up there, shows that there is that potential coming. And it was just a shame it wasn't able to result in him starting further up in that sense
Mhm.
for, before then. But did lead to quite an amusing kind of post race chat. Cody was saying, like I was just mentioning earlier, like you were doing so well, then you ended up in the LCQ, but you made it to the final. Talk us through it. And Tanner just called us in and things. Well, it all started when I was 6 years old. And you think he's just straight away cool as a cucumber out of the car, and he's just in this for the fun of it. He's very serious in the car, but he's immediately then switching, and you think, I think that's an ideal way for a driver coming back into something to take it, where you're obviously going to be competitive, but there is that kind of distance as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think everyone wants to see different people. And I do have like, I want him to win a round this season. Like, if he can come out and win the championship overall, that would be awesome.
And that's a more
Is it
outlandish bet to make, but I'm all there for it.
is it a three-peat if Larson? We used
Yeah,
to,
be three for
it's
three.
three-peat, right?
Hmm.
I mean, I'd like to see that. Who's won a championship 3 years in a row? Okay, let's not say that because it has been done many a times, apparently, you know. But
In other categories. But again, we've got people here where, as you said in Richmond, granted you misspoke, but you weren't against it. Martel would be a great one to kind of deny
mhm,
him that. McConnell would be great. He would absolutely love that. But then you've got Backwood who would definitely love that. And I think
yeah.
everyone else, whilst they probably could, at least are less likely. But like I say, with Faust, can be those fly in the ointments for whoever they choose to be, and maybe they don't even have that much in terms of being able to plan who they want to be a fly in the ointment for. They just cause chaos, and you see who can capitalize the most out of it.
Yeah, I definitely think it's now going to be the entire
Just everyone against
grid
Larson.
against Larson. I'm here for it. I'm excited for this. So guys, if you listen to this and you know you see, like, come on, give Larson a run for his money because I don't care who of you win. Let's just see if you can break the three-peat. No offense
Was
to
it the
Larson
was
because
it
we do know
the
I love him.
was it the first Avengers film where you, or like sorry, the first like the last big Avengers films where you had Thanos just kind of walking along and you had about six people just trying to claw him back in one place? It's like this is what that feels like to me. It's like we just gotta try everything we can here. Just throw everything at him.
Absolutely. And then, you know, because we always get lost in the predictions for the year. It's just it happens. It's the things that we get excited about. But we did also have another round at this one.
A whole other round, yes.
I've got to be honest. I don't know how I'm feeling about the double rounds consistently. Personally,
I
I am still
hmm.
trying to figure out whether I enjoy it or whether it's unnecessary and we should just be bringing more tracks in. I understand it's costly, but like I'd like to see variety over double rounds. Personal take.
I want both. I think
Okay.
I don't like. I enjoy the double rounds in the sense of when you've got the gaps being what they are between rounds anyway. I like that we get a lot of bang for buck then, and if you're at the event, it's still relatively affordable. You get a lot for your money. But I think we've got what, six rounds in total? Not six rounds, but like six rounds,
Mhm.
six big rounds. Let's go with that. Across the season, and I would prefer even just a couple more. I think, and it's not like America doesn't have enough locations where you could make that happen um, to fill in some of those gaps a little bit, or you go back up to Canada, or maybe you go down to Mexico. You have one of these kind of rounds, a bit like IndyCar has. They go to Toronto once a year,
Mhm.
do that sort of thing. So I know what you mean. It does feel like you have everything packed into one weekend, and then you get nothing for ages. But then when you are watching around, it is rinse and repeat. And I think Nitrocross has been lucky in the sense that the track is very different from one day to the next. You saw that in Richmond, you saw that a bit here
Mhm.
in Salt Lake City. So there is that element of variety to it, and there isn't a guarantee that whoever won on Saturday is going to win on Sunday. But I agree with you. It's kind of with every other motorsport series we watch, we get that element of variety that we haven't got as much here.
I
I'm just
agree. And
greedy, I think.
I am, and that's exactly it for me. It's one of those things of like, I want to see them perform on all types of tracks and surfaces because that's just what we enjoy. And like, I do want to see difference. And I do agree with you. It's nice that, you know, spectators are getting more bang for their buck by going to these things. But I do wonder why only have 6 rounds when there's so many more options. We could do 8 and we could do only a couple of double headers and then those double headers become like the double points rounds maybe and you just kind of get people pushing more. I feel like when you're expected to do the same, I don't know, I've always had those things of like it should be more if you're doing a double round, like it should be feel a big thing than like every round feeling like a consistent double round.
I get what you mean, and I think as a potential counter to that, maybe you have a couple of extra rounds, but you only do like a single round at that round, opposed to being a double
Hmm.
header. That way you can test out new locations more and have it be a more affordable thing. You can bring in the locals that way and people who would not get that spotlight as much. Because you already get that here in some ways. Drivers will only come in
Hmm.
for one turn because it's the closest thing they've got. But I think if you did that a bit more, then you grow it more organically, the championship that way. But yeah, I do agree with a lot of what you say there. It's there is a median in there somewhere that I think, and I think maybe that is a potential future plan for Nitro. They're still growing and still learning. Maybe we're just wanting it now because we know it works and we just want to see more of it. But
Yeah,
until we find the CEO and get them on here, we can't. We can only guess.
I know. And I think that's it. We're like 3 seasons in with this now. And there's like a few things that I'm like, oh, come on, we're there. You know it's doing well, you know it's successful, like you know you're gonna have people showing up to these rounds if you're there. Like try it out. No one's saying yeah, no one's saying they have to be
We
like
need the ambition they had in that first season where they went global immediately and
exactly. I
go
want that back.
apply that mentality to America, go global in America, that sort of thing, and you go left, right, and center all over the place and do it that way.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
But round four, we had a whole other round of racing. We
Yeah,
were
we
going to start
do.
talking about it at some point.
So round four, let's do the quick round off. Baja Bugs winner, Fleamate,
Yeah,
Flamate,
Flamati, I think,
Flamati.
Mexican.
Oh,
Um,
geez.
no,
That is
that's all
just
right.
weird.
If I hadn't seen the interview with him, I would have made the same mistake. I think so. This is why I make sure I watch a lot of it if I can. But yeah, the only non-American competing in Baja Bugs. So he
Nice.
then just trounced all of them, which was quite fun.
Yeah.
Um,
And
Baja Bugs are
then,
Baja Bugs.
yeah, exactly. And then nice amount of, we always have good numbers. I love Baja Bugs for numbers. They make me
Hmm.
happy. I need all of the categories to have that. SXS, we had Corey Willis in pole position because apparently this is a big deal now, 45 points if it's real the whole way across. And then,
It would explain how some people that don't make it very far get so many points out of a weekend if they've somehow ended up on
exactly.
pole.
And then winner in that, Baker, P1. Been a little while since he did well in his first season, and then obviously Travis is taking it to him. But it's really fun watching his progression, I think, over the years that we've watched him racing.
And I think
Um,
it's quite fun as well that, like you say, he had that battle with Travis, and then as soon as Travis is in there, like, great, I can just get on with it now, and he goes and wins.
mhm,
And the guy standing in for Travis Banks Hovey, he get P2 and like, you're close, but you ain't getting that win from me. I'm taking this.
yeah, exactly. And then next Evo, we had Mitchell de Jong on pole position, and he also won that round. So
Yeah,
nice to
another
see the
really
little fight
impressive
between the two of
kind of
them.
race from him.
Yeah, Hallman P2 and then Janssen P3. I'm enjoying this. It looks like it might be a Hallman De Jong kind of like fight for the
I was just
season.
thinking I would like to see other drivers on the podium, but I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if we just keep seeing an alternation of these three on the podium. It's just which position are they in
Yeah. I'd like to
for the
see
season.
Spezia doing a little bit better on the
Yeah,
rounds as well, like cracking that kind of podium vibe. And then we'll round out with, Group E. Surprise, surprise. Robin Larson in top qualifier and pole position because those 45 points. This is how he wins championships. I'll throw that out there. And then lovely to see Backerud holding his own again and double double winner for the weekend.
yeah, and we got a really great battle for the lead straight away between Backward Larson and Martel coming off the line. And Martel unfortunately went into the wall after a bit of a barmy with Larson, which if you were watching that live, you saw the tail end of it, and you saw a lot of dust coming up, and you think, oh, what's happened there? And then you see the replay, and it's a much harder hit than you would have thought. Um, Unfortunately, as well, then Leo Block, because you've got all this dust in the air, as I say, just drives straight into him, into his door, did a 360 spin, and went on to manage to finish the race, but with obviously good bit of damage. Everyone was all right with it, but it was just a very dramatic way to finish off what had been quite an exciting race up to that point. And meanwhile, like you say, you've got Backrud out in front who's just like, just don't red flag it. Don't let them get up to me again because I'm out here. I'm staying away from all the chaos behind, and it just shows that we don't often get to see Larson in traffic.
Hmm.
And we always wonder when you've got a dominant driver, what's that going to be like when they're a little bit out of position? And we saw potentially a little bit of what that's like. And luckily, everyone was all right, and there wasn't any kind of aggro this time following the racing. But always interesting for me, I think, when you stick someone like Hamilton or Verstappen or Larson or Hello down the order. Like, can you actually get through this cleanly?
Yeah, exactly. But what's also interesting for me is, same 1, 2, 3 as the round before.
Yeah,
I always
Yeah, it's
love
quite
that.
funny. We
It's
we did a
always so.
completely different methodology for it, but we got the exact same result. Wasn't a complete sweep for Andres Backerud this weekend though, because whilst he did get the fastest lap in round three, Conor Martell, amusingly, despite the crash in the final race of the whole weekend, was the driver to get fastest lap in round four, which meant that both of them got $2,500 each, which, as we were just saying off podcast, is not bad pocket money to get for just driving quickly around a circuit.
Take it.
Another note just to make for the weekend, I think, is that part of what Nitrocross is doing this year is donating to some good causes, and they've got Farm Rescue and Ducks Unlimited, which I want to find out more about because I'm intrigued about what Ducks Unlimited entails. They got 5k each from both Bush, which is obviously the beer sponsor for Nitro and Nitrocross itself. Um, this was also, sadly, Cash Lecroy's last race weekend. We're not going to see him again, actually, for a while. It's too expensive, apparently, to keep going, which I think he was talking to Jared about it, and Jared was saying that it's quite a sensible, mature decision to not just keep throwing money after it that you don't potentially have, and to focus on school, which is also ridiculous when you think about the fact that he's still got to go to school. Um, well, it's not ridiculous. He's young enough, but um, so hopefully he can find a way back at some point. He's definitely talented enough with what we've seen from him over the last couple of rounds at the very least. So it's a shame to see him go. And yeah, I'm going to be again. I think this is one of those things where, as much as you can showcase your talents in Nitro for as long as you're able to be there, also shows that you still need the sponsors there, and that even when you're given that platform, it's not a guarantee that you'll be able to keep going. Unfortunately.
No, absolutely. And I think it just reminds you how expensive this sport is. No matter what you say, even rounds like Nitro, they're trying to make it more affordable. They're trying to give you options of categories that you can join that are at different cost levels. It's always going to be expensive and it's always going to take a toll on the people, like drivers and families involved, because there's no way to make it cheaper. And that's a shame. I think that's something that I think is definitely needs to be explored in motorsport in the long run. How do you make it more accessible in a monetary standpoint, as well as obviously others? But yeah, that's a shame. But hopefully we'll eventually see him back. And it just made me feel very old when you talk about the fact that these are kids are going to school still, you know?
Yeah, I'll try not to do too much more of that, and not helped by Tommy Hellman, admittedly, because I don't know actually how old he is, but he's close to our age than some of the kids are. But it's the fact that after at the next Evo final for round three, this is my quote of the weekend for him. He was up in the commentary booth with Jared and Coley, and Jared going, "You just won that race, then you ran up there. You're clearly in peak performance right now." And Tommy Hellman goes, "Yeah, I'm just fucked all over." It's like, yeah, no, I'm hurting a lot on the inside. That took a lot more effort than I thought it would, but I think that's one of the things where we were curious about the broadcasting changes over the last couple of years as to where they go. They're on YouTube, they were on TV in some place, depending on the region, and now they're on Rumble. And we're like, are they staying there now? Or are they going somewhere else? What's the deal? It's like, say what you want about Rumble and whatever else you've got with it, but they do let you say whatever you want there. And it was quite nice that I think in Richmond there was the reminder that a couple of drivers went to go and swear, fought themselves because of their media training, and Kelly went, "It's fine on Rumble, you can say what the fuck you want,"
That
and
is crazy
they
to
just do
me.
accordingly.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's actually funnily enough, during this podcast, it's been a thought of mine. This needs to go onto mainstream media. That's so funny. Literally, this
I think
entire
that
podcast, I've
also
been
just
sat
begs the
there
question
thinking
of what
about.
is the definition of mainstream media these days? What is the best place
You're
to put it
right.
on? Because you think, is it old school TV? Probably not. But then if you do a streaming service, what do you do that to? Then you put yourself behind a paywall potentially. Do you stick with Rumble where it's free and you can do whatever the hell you like until you're big enough to warrant something else? Because I think for me, one of the big issues I had this year with Formula E is they went behind a paywall with BT Sports in the UK at least, and they're in their 10th season this year, I think,
Oh, wow.
and just made me think that you're you're doing well, but I don't think you're big enough, anywhere near big enough yet to warrant that kind of a price hike, especially from zero to there. I think maybe doing something that European Le Mans Series does, where or World Rallycross, for example, they have packages where you can do it race by race for a full season or for parts of a season. Like they've got a variety of things. That's maybe a better way of going into that middle ground of we want
Mhm.
you to pay for this, but do as much as you like. But I think for now, as much as I would like to see it on Prime or something like this, where there's just that even bigger backing behind it, I think for now, whilst they still try and grow everything and sort themselves out, because as we say, they've not got everything nailed down on the racing front or on the presenting front, it feels like, in terms of the overall coverage. It's not the worst place to be, I think, if you look at it from a long lens, but I can see why you're questioning it at the same time.
Yeah, it's just thoughts that have always been through my mind, but that was a completely different segue on what we were supposed to be talking
It's all
about.
right. We do that a lot today.
I know. Yeah, these are things that actually genuinely go through my mind during these podcasts, though that I don't know
It's
why
good
my
that a
mind.
bit of your brain's working. That's good.
Yeah,
There's some
yeah.
critical thinking going on in there somewhere.
But we can bring you on to championship standings now. We don't have those. We wish we did.
No, no,
We can get we
there's
can make some assertive guesses that Larson is one of the for Group E. De Jong is Next Evo, Kanan Baker, SXS, and then you never ever know what's going on in Baja Bugs. So
no. We know that someone's got 45 points for another. To do people who got pole over this weekend, so it was what Terry Madden and let's have a look. Who's and Nick Eisenhower. They both have at least 45 points. Everyone else probably has points as well. Don't know what they are just yet. I don't know why we don't have standings for them. It bugs me, and I will once again dive into the internet and see if I can find some trace of something. It's almost as if they don't take it too seriously, Nabila.
yeah.
It's very annoying.
Nitrocross, the one thing we're going to need from you this year is points graphics. We like
They've got the
graph.
graphics, they just don't explain them.
Well,
They've met you on the middle ground there. Like, you weren't
yeah,
specific enough,
I
so here's
guess
what the point
I
standings
lied.
are, but we won't tell you how they got there.
Yeah, I'm gonna need both. I'm gonna need you to do a mathematical equation on how you get there, or just, just show me once and I'll understand it. I don't need you to show me every time. I
I
need you to
think that
show
was
me
the
once.
thing. The most amusing thing from Richmond was the fact that Kevin Eriksson was in one practice session before he went to hospital, and he still got points by the end of the weekend. And you go, "You've been in hospital. How does he have anything?"
And on that nonsensical note, that is all we have time for on today's Nitro Cross podcast episode. Thank you for joining us and listening to our wonderful ramblings because we do get there at some point. We appreciate you and we look forward to bringing you some more, hopefully, driver interviews soon and some more Nitro Cross fun. You can follow us on social media, and everything will be in the description below. Thank you very much, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.